ALC members have an EBITDA that is 5% higher than non-members.
And welcome everyone to Slator Pod. Today, really excited to have on the podcast Shamus Syed, the CEO of Interpreters Unlimited. And alongside Shamus, we welcome back a very familiar face, so Slator's very own head of research, Anna Wyndham. Now, they're both here today to share insights about the 2024 ALC Industry Survey Report, which we co-produced. So hi, Shamus and Anna. Thanks so much for joining.
Hi there. Thank you, Florian. Thank you, Anna, for having me.
Hi, Florian. Good to see you, Shamus.
So some regular listeners know that Anna is based in Madrid, but Shamus, where are you based?
I am based in a very warm and sunny San Diego.
Yeah, rub it in. All right, let's move on to the survey. So first, give the very few listeners and viewers who don't know ALC a quick intro of ALC, and then tell us a bit more about the survey and how you went about doing this.
Well, look, ALC started as a group within the ATA. ALC, of course, the Association of Language Companies. ALC is dedicated to company owners' management. It is not designed for the people that do. It's for the people that manage. Okay, and that's the key difference between ATA and ALC. ALC started as a group within the ATA and within the association of as a division of companies, but they didn't have the voting capabilities, nor did they have the budget to operate independently. So the charter members met to get it off the ground. The group liked to learn about each other's experience and how they could all work together. As we know, there's a quote from a physicist, Kelvin, and he says, "What is not defined cannot be measured. What is not measured cannot be improved. What is not improved is always degraded." That was the basis of the survey. It started as an anonymous survey to learn and measure, especially when much of our industry had come from academia. The value that was being added really was not being regarded. And this was the beginning of establishing standards, which that's a whole nother subject as well. So this survey professionalized what we're doing. And of course, you needed the numbers to be able to professionalize it. I do want to give credit where credit is due. The survey was started by Randall Morgan. He's one of the charter members of the association. And I was on his committee dating back to 2009. I ran it solo. I took over the committee in 2010. The survey was always one of the more attended sessions amongst the conferences. It was fun, it was entertaining, and it delivered critical information. Over time, the industry adapted to the changing world, and so did the survey and its delivery, which is why you're here and how we got engaged.
All right, thank you for that background. So Anna, so we collaborate with the ALC to run the survey. You were in the lead, so tell us a bit more about timeline, participants, the many topics we covered. It ended up being like, what, 150-page monster report, which, Shamus, show us, for those on YouTube, we actually printed it out, or ALC printed it out. Look at that beauty. Okay, for those who are on YouTube, check it out. Anna, so tell us more about this, timeline, participants, topics.
Yeah, exactly. So, it's great to collaborate with ALC on this. Before we start, I just wanted to thank all of the language service companies that took part in the survey. So without your responses, this would not be possible. It's what allows us to bring this data together. And yeah, as you mentioned, Florian, the product is a 150-page report of data and insights covering the language industry from growth, profitability, pricing, salaries, workforce strategies, services strategies, AI, and much more. So we ran the survey from June to July of this year, and 127 companies took part this year. So that was up 50% from last year, which is great, and coming from over 28 different countries. the majority from the US. So about just over half of the participating companies are from the US. And in terms of the size of the companies that take part, they're mainly small to mid-size. So the bulk of the companies are in this range of 1 to 8 million US dollars in annual revenue, with about 20% under 1 million and 20% above 8 million. And of course, the companies provide a very wide range of translation services, from translation, interpreting, media localization, software localization, language testing and training, sign language interpreting, and much more. So a very good snapshot of the industry.
How long did it take for a participant, kind of on average, to complete the survey?
It really depends on the answers. So depending on your answers as to what you focus on in your company, you'll be taken through a different path through the survey, but between 15 and 25 minutes.
All right. So for next year, everyone, 15 to 25 minutes. That's the time you need to spare for this. So we want to add another 50% next year to that. So let's talk about growth, profitability, two very key metrics here. You know, what doesn't get measured doesn't get done. So first, LSP growth, profitability. Anna, what were some of the key findings there?
One of the findings was that 61% of companies reported that they grew year on year in 2023. Around 24% said that they maintained the same revenue, and 14% reported a decline. So there are some indications of some challenges in the environment there. But if we dig into that a little bit more, and you can find the details in the report, you can see that it's really companies in the middle bracket that had the lowest growth, whereas companies below 1 million and above 25 million performed most strongly. And it's also interesting to look at the growth results by main business line. We can see that interpreting companies performed more strongly. So 70% of in companies that had interpreting as a main business line grew, compared to 50% of translation companies. And that links back to the customer base of these interpreting companies: healthcare, government, education, which are still showing strong demand. Speaking of interpreting, and of course, Interpreters Unlimited, Shamus, your company. So can you comment on some of the kind of key findings for interpreting services, beyond just high-level financials?
Sure, absolutely. Well, I could break that down into 7 different areas. Strong revenue growth. Interpreting-focused companies generally outperform other language LSCs in terms of revenue growth, just as Anna mentioned. It was driven by steady demand from key sectors such as healthcare and government. 70% of interpreting companies reported growth in 2023, a higher proportion compared to LSP's focus on other services like translation, which is exactly what Anna had referred as well. Number 2, remote interpreting is on the rise. Remote interpreting, especially the RI and RSI, remote simultaneous, saw significant pricing increases in 23. This points to the growing demand and acceptance of the remote solutions, and we can thank COVID for that. A significant portion of interpreting services, particularly in sign language interpreting, is now delivered remotely. Sign language interpreting rates also increased by about 10%, reflecting both demand and specialized nature of this service. Number 3, in the health and government sectors, interpreting companies benefited from the continued demand, where legal mandates and regulations ensure the language access remains a high priority. Healthcare, of course, remained as a core driver, with many interpreting companies heavily engaged in servicing hospitals, clinics, public health agencies, and so forth. And then government and public services also relied on interpreting services for courtrooms, public hearing, immigration processes, and those seeking assistance for public services, welfare, etc. Number 4, the competitive landscape. The competitive landscape for interpreting services is dominated by well-established players like LanguageLine and LanguageLink, which were frequently cited as the main competitors. Smaller regional companies also play a significant role. I had an opportunity to have a one-on-one with one of the executives in residence programs from the ALC. I'm not going to name who that executive was for the moment, but we spoke directly, and they too suggested the exact same trend, that smaller regional companies and regional accounts can account for a bigger part of in a company's growth versus going after the institutions. And that is part of what we saw in that initial smaller company grew. I feel that that is how and why they grew more significantly than the others. Number 5, technology and AI impact, which I'm sure we'll talk about here as we progress down the survey. While interpreting surveys has traditionally been a human-centered operation, the rise of AI and LLMs is beginning to have an impact, particularly in speech translation. Although 3 companies reported AI speech translation as a competitor, this technology is in its early stages, right? And so it's within this interpreting segment compared to its adoption in translation services. Last couple, demand for skilled interpreters. It is no secret labor is our biggest weakness or threat, depending upon how you look at it. Companies reported persistent challenges in sourcing skilled interpreters. And lastly, pricing trends. In addition to the pricing uptake for RSI, VRI, and RSI, other interpreting services remained stable or showed modest changes. This suggests that while demand is growing, traditional on-site interpreting pricing may be more market-driven and stable compared to the rapidly evolving remote sector.
All right. So Anna, you also asked about strategic directions, priorities in 2024. Like, what were some of the highlights there?
Yeah, we asked companies to tell us what are your top business priorities in 2024. And the third most cited priority was to cut operational costs. So again, pointing to the slightly challenging environment. Number 2 was to develop new service offerings. And number 1 was grow revenue, perhaps unsurprisingly. But we did dig a bit deeper into that priority of companies to grow their service portfolio. And we looked at the services that companies have added over the past 3 years. The most commonly added services were content creation, transcription, subtitling, SEO, and voiceover. And we also looked at which services companies say they plan to add in the next 3 years. And the top responses there were machine translation, post-editing, and AI services. And we'll get into that a bit more, I think, in a further question. But I think what it shows is a kind of shift in the interest in terms of how to diversify service portfolios.
Right. Well, one good place to start if you want to diversify. We just published the audiovisual translation report a few hours ago, or maybe yesterday. So go get that. Also, M&A, obviously big topic among the boutique and the kind of smaller players there and the bigger ones. So any takeaways from M&A?
Yeah, interest is up. The heightened interest in M&A slightly up. 16 companies in the sample set had made an acquisition in the last 18 months. The rationale behind that was mostly to meet increasing customer demand. 8% of companies said they intend to make an acquisition in the next 12 months, and 5% said that they plan to exit the industry within the next 12 months. And a pattern that emerged is that smaller companies are showing a more active interest in selling their business. However, larger companies are the most opportunistic, so they're most likely to say, we're open to considering an attractive offer if one should arise.
At the right price, most are for sale. And we talked about interpreting. What about written translation services? Any key findings that we haven't covered yet on translation services?
Yeah, a lot of different key findings. We covered a lot of different aspects, but I'll just home in on a couple of key data points. The first was the adoption of machine translation post-editing, the acceleration of that. So 78% of translation providers now offer MTPE as a client-facing service, and that's up from 60% last year.
So as a client-facing service, meaning they're basically telling the clients that's what they're doing. But exactly. Maybe 90 or 95% would do it, but maybe they don't position it towards the client.
Exactly. And you can find the exact percentage of companies that are using machine translation internally and the percentage offering it as a service in the report. And those are different percentages, yeah. And another key data point is that 29% of translation providers are now using large language models to perform machine translation. And that's up from 11% this time last year. So that's obviously a big trend across the whole industry, with companies using LLMs either in conjunction with or instead of traditional MT models. And I know that we've covered in our coverage in various conferences and Slator pods on the many different capabilities that large language models offer in terms of contextual relevance of the translations and adaptability and so on. So we can really see that that trend taking hold this year.
All right. And so Shamus, so each year the ALC selects a specific theme to explore that in the survey, right? So tell us, what was this year's theme focus and why did the ALC choose it?
I almost feel as if I don't even need to say it. But it focused on the impact and the adoption of AI and LLMs. It's and this theme was obviously selected because of its increasing role that Anna just mentioned 5 seconds ago. We're seeing that the decision obviously was just the rapid advancement and the profound implications it has on the future of language services. The industry is witnessing a growth for demand in AI-driven solutions, and we're seeing that LSPs and their clients are embracing it, whether it's MT, AI transcription, real-time speech translation, AI subtitling, and dubbing. The survey found that 3/4 of LSP had received proactive inquiries from clients about adopting AI-based services. LSPs, the growth of AI, they began offering AI-driven services such as transcription, subtitling, MTPE, etc. Disruption and opportunity. LSPs have mixed feelings about the impact of AI. Some view it as an opportunity. Some don't. Some don't know where to place it, whether they place it on the back end operationally or on the front end. Skill development and competitiveness, which ties into what I just shared. The survey highlighted how LSPs are increasing valuing AI skills in their workforce and recognize that the success of the AI era will depend not on only adopting new technologies, but also ensuring employees have the capabilities to work with the AI tools. Companies agreed that customer service excellence and industry knowledge will be essential to staying competitive along AI-driven solutions. Again, we don't want to replace the people because that's where the customer service and the industry knowledge comes from. AI can be used as a very valuable tool to enhance that service and that knowledge.
Anna, did you have a few more data points on the AI topic? Because I saw it was a big part of the survey, of course.
Yeah, it was a big part of the survey, and it was great to dig into this. And as you've shared on many podcasts before, we have this theme emerging this year of this heightened interest at C-level in using translation and localization as an AI use case. And it was great to get some validation of this customer interest in AI services. As Shamus mentioned, 76% of language service companies reported that their customers have proactively approached them to ask them about applying AI language services within the last 6 months. So that really does validate that level of interest from the enterprise side. And we have data points on the specific AI language services being offered by companies. So you'll recall that companies have said they're more interested in starting to offer these services. Already 24% offer AI transcription, 16% offer AI subtitling, up from 11%. And we saw a jump in the proportion of companies offering speech AI services. So 13% now offering AI dubbing and 10% offering AI real-time speech translation. And there was a really nice quote that came out of the survey that I think sums up the mood. There was a participant who said, "The industry is in a huge state of flux, and the opportunity is real to use AI to offer more services and products, setting up businesses to grow and consolidate. It's a rare opportunity." So there were very mixed viewpoints on AI, but this was one of the overriding themes, that this is a moment of opportunity for the industry. We looked at the proportion of companies that are specifically implementing large language models, and we found that 21%, so 1 in 5 companies, have implemented large language models, up from 3% last year. And in addition to that, 73% said that they plan to implement LLMs. So we can really see the pace of adoption and the breadth of adoption. And we dug quite deeply into what are the actual use cases that companies are using large language models for, the linguistic use cases and the business use cases. So the linguistic use cases, the top ones are machine translation, automated post-editing, glossary creation, as well as quality estimation. But it was also very interesting to see that companies, language service companies, are using large language models for a very diverse set of business use cases. The top ones being sales and marketing tasks and content creation, as well as client reporting, policy writing, product development, and strategy testing. And I'll point you to the report to find, if anyone's interested in seeing the list of applications, there's 30 or 35 diverse business use cases across different areas of the business.
Cool. Let's talk about the ALC Annual Summit, which you both had the pleasure of going. I didn't. I had to go back from California to Zurich. So that was in Montreal in early September. So Shamus, tell us a bit more, a few highlights, the mood, some of the other presentations, just your personal impressions.
I'm happy to say that it was the usual. You got camaraderie, you got business connections, you got a lot of laughs, good times, potential M&A opportunities. Hey, I need help with this. Oh, I can help with this. Can you do this? I can do this. Do you do that? And then to say, let's get together and have a further discussion. And that discussion ends up at the bar, and that continues into dinner. Half or more, 10 more people join and be part of that discussion. And that discussion, you go off on a tangent and you talk about some more fun stuff. It's a lot of fun. You meet people, you network with people, you get together with people that you didn't know. You saw their names, but you didn't know really what they do. And you realize that person, that individual, that company could be a huge tool in your arsenal. Look, I've been going to the summits for the better part of 20 years, about 17 years. 2 acquisitions came directly as a result of attending the ALCs. One of the questions we should do, Anna, God willing, for next year is how much we all spend with each other. And the number is less important to highlight. What's more important to highlight is the trust we all have amongst our colleagues. My top 3 vendors are all ALC members. Because we have a chance to meet with everyone in this capacity, a management capacity, the solutions that come into play are more robust. They're more tailored. It's let's figure out how we can solve this challenge. Let's figure out a way on how we can make this work. I like you, we like each other, we trust each other. So let's figure out a way to address your business challenge or your business opportunity. And that is what the ALC is all about.
For 2025, any specific focus goals other than the question that we're definitely going to add to next year's survey?
Well, look, embracing and guiding AI integration. We're not going to go into too much depth there because we've already talked about the various opportunities and threats. Number 2, workforce development and skill enhancement. That includes AI-related skills as well as linguistic expertise, both of which to support workforce development. And of course, addressing the ongoing recruitment challenges we have in building our workforce. Expanding service and market diversification. The goal is to promote self-diversification and market expansion for member companies. That's exactly one of the earlier statements that Anna had made when we talked about how LSPs are diversifying. So promoting that. M&A support. M&A support, everyone is interested. Everyone has an interest. Either it's the right price to buy or the right price to sell. But there's also the goal for this next year is to provide additional guidance and to navigate the M&A landscape. There are what we didn't mention in the M&A part of here is overall market conditions and private equity appetite, and how both of those have a direct impact on M&A activity. Yes, you do have strategic buys, two of which I know of right in this past conference that I became aware of, that were truly strategic buys, but not all of them are strategic buys. Many of them are roll-ups, and that's sparked by private equity activity. So that's an area of navigating the M&A landscape. Strengthening member engagement in industry collaboration. I just got done saying how valuable the membership is by getting to know your colleagues. So we want to continue to foster a stronger sense of community and collaboration amongst the association. Advocacy and thought leadership. Then that is the goal here for 25 is to advocate for the industry on key regulatory and economic issues. ALC started the advocacy program with Dr. Bill Rivers at the helm as our lobbyists. We are the only industry association with our own lobbyists. That's directly part of our association, and that's huge. As an association, we have the ability to influence regulations that impact us at the very front end. Ensuring quality and competitiveness in the AI era. And we talked about diversification as a part of that as well. And lastly, preparing for economic and market changes. No one planned on COVID, and it's completely changed and reshaped our industry. So when we go back to talking about improving operational aspects of our business, that's part of this goal and part of the action item for this goal.
Thank you so much, Shamus. Thanks, Anna, and everybody who listens. Go to the ALC website. You can get the report there. Yeah, fantastic. Thanks so much to the ALC for doing this with us, and come back to the podcast anytime, maybe in 2025 again.
Thank you. May I make one more plug towards the ALC?
Absolutely.
At the very end, Anna had provided some key information on how ALC members performed relative to non-members.
Oh, yeah.
And that was a powerful takeaway. When you take a look based on the data from the survey and assuming representative midpoints for each revenue range, I determined an average rough calculation of average revenue, right? 20% of companies were under 1 million, 60% were between 1 and 8, 16% were between 8 and 25, and 4% earned above 25 million. So if you chose the midpoints for each one of those ranges and you used a weighted average approach based on those percentages, the estimated average annual revenue was 6.44 million. We saw, based on that, Anna shared that ALC members have an EBITDA that is 5% higher than non-members. If you take that average company revenue of 6.44 million, 5% of that is $322,000. With that being said, ALC members have an average of $322,000 more at our bottom line versus non-members. That's a powerful number to show the benefit of the ALC and what the ALC brings to its members.
Pays to be part of the ALC. All right. Thanks a lot, Shamus. Great to know to end it on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.